I am something of an evangelist in that I really have decided that climate is the issue, as has been said on this stage numerous times already today, and we're going to really talk on this session about one of the absolutely central, critical ways that the world has to take action on climate, and that is essentially to recognize what the soil really is. I mean, in effect, that's what we're here to talk about. But I wanted to start just briefly by reading a little passage from Paul Hawken's book called Regeneration, because it's got a beautiful and succinct explanation of what regenerative agriculture is. So indulge me with this. 15 million smallholder farmers and tens of thousands of farmers and ranchers all over the world are using regenerative techniques. Regenerative systems include agroforestry, agroecology. Oops. Oh, I knew this would happen. Come on. I should, relying on your phone is really dangerous. Okay, sorry. Silvopasture, pasture cropping, real organics, and advanced rotational grazing. Specific methods include no-till, complex cover crops, prairie strips, perennial crops, animal integration, and crop diversification. One of the outcomes is the sequestration of atmospheric carbon dioxide, resulting in significant increases in the carbon content of healthy soils. Regenerative agriculture has become the archetype and template for regeneration in general. It transforms farming into a method that promotes life, biological diversity, human and animal health, plant vigor, and pollinator viability. The term regenerative agriculture was coined 40 years ago by organic farming advocate Robert Rodale, yet its origin is in indigenous agriculture. Lands have been continuously cropped for many thousands of years in the Americas, Africa, and Asia. Regenerative practices were well in hand in Western Africa long ago, where the use of charcoal and green waste created durable dark earths that are 3 to 4 times more fertile than the thin, nutrient-poor rainforest soils. African indigenous farming knowledge was used by slaves on white plantations in the American South. These practices caught the attention of George Washington Carver, who studied them scientifically and shared his knowledge, becoming the progenitor of regenerative agriculture in the United States in the early 1900s. But despite all that, it's still not nearly widely enough practiced, and I would say, as an American, most Americans have no clue what it actually is. So hopefully you'll get a sense of that on this panel. And also, we really hope that you can take away from this panel a sense of, okay, it makes a lot of sense, but what does it mean for me? But to start out with that, I want to go, Steffi did a nice job introducing the panelists. Benedikt, there at the end, is something of a TV star, as I understand it, especially here in Germany. The show Farm Rebellion, which Doris was deeply involved in as a major progenitor of that, has been promoting the activities of regenerative agriculture through deep exploration of his farm. So tell us what regenerative agriculture is in your mind and what you're doing.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and very happy to be here. I think regenerative farming is somewhat undefined, and that is a big weakness of it. At the same time, it's a big strength. As far as I can see it is, we have to learn to think not only farming, but also the economy from the soil up. So specific regional ecosystems demand different methods, and we know everything about the industrial methods, the linear methods, the technological methods. What we don't know is how we can use natural systems, how we can understand the complexity of ecosystems to find answers to some of these daunting challenges. And that for me means that agriculture is by far the biggest and most important instrument to overcome some of the biggest problems of our time. Because land use is not only producing highly nutritious food, but it is always on a global scale. Education, development of rural areas, it is about equality, it is about biodiversity,
employment.
It is about climate adaptation, yes. And once we understand that, we understand why we have to change our philosophy of agriculture. If you ask me, I define it as agriculture that through being run in a productive model is not only producing food, but is also increasing biodiversity, is closing nutrient cycles, is storing carbon and building soil health, and while treating animals as sentient beings and also treating the people that work on the farm as people that have such an important task to all of our lives, and also be in a regional context where you are able and willing to look after not only yourself but on a more sort of ecological space.
So a lot of people here may not have seen the TV series. Just quickly describe your farm.
So we run a farm around 3,000 hectares, 1 hour east of Berlin, and this is one of the really driest areas in the whole of Germany. So it's an incredible tough environment for agriculture and forestry. And what we do is we have a strong focus on research. So we built our own foundation in 2021, and we analyze, we research different methodologies of regenerative agriculture. So starting from composting, different agroforestry system, we incorporate cattle into the crop rotation to build soil. We have many different methods, some of which you read out in the statement, that we need to gather the data, we need to understand it, we need to understand how we can actually scale them also to have that ecological and social impact. And this is really what we do. So we have a ton of people running around on the farm, causing chaos, all in a controlled setting, of course. But no, it's a beautiful area. It is tough, but that makes it so valuable to research in that very tough setting, because the future is not, or it's always going to be drier, or it's always going to be wetter. The future is unpredictability, and the unpredictability can only be overcome with healthy soil and healthy ecosystems.
Right, so you have sort of a living laboratory in the farm, but you're also a real promoter of these ideas and even an activist, so thank you. Jan, who was very involved in putting the session together, by the way, longtime Berta and DLD partisan part of the whole community here, you're a venture capitalist, but you had an epiphany about regenerative agriculture. What has happened to you?
Well, this epiphany happened nearly 7 years ago. It started with a book by a guy called Michael Pollan, The Omnivore Dilemma, and it taught me that farming can actually regenerate soils, as something I wasn't aware of. I thought what we have depleted, and we have 50% of the soils worldwide are depleted, I thought we cannot recover. And why is soil so important? The more carbon we have in the soil, the better our food is, the more nutrient dense our food is. We can actually store more water in the soils. The infiltration rate of the soil is much better. We can grow. Actually, our biome that we have in our stomach is influenced by the biome in the soil, because it's nearly identical. And if the soils are depleted, we are getting sick, and all the chronic diseases we have nowadays
allergies
is a big issue. So Bill Clinton once coined a phrase which he was saying, it's the economy stupid. And I'm saying, no, it's nature stupid. And why is that? Because if we look at the natural system, it's basically based on 4 principles. First of all, nature is emergent. It is moving from the simple to the complex. It's evolutionary, it's self-organizing, it's dynamic, it's life. Second, nature is actually collaborative. It's based on synergies. There's a synergy between the plant and the soil. The plant feeds the soil, and vice versa. There's a synergy between the animal and the soil, because the animals actually prune the plants, and that dynamizes the system. And finally, there's the predator who is actually regulating the pruning animals. So I put it very simple. Nature is diverse. It's not a monoculture. And finally, nature is circular. That's why we're here. And circular means basically it's using all the waste to grow and bring life back. And this conference is just about circular. It's very important, and that is so difficult for us to understand. There are a couple more principles, and they all interact with each other. Now, if we look at our system, we're doing completely the opposite. We're thinking that we can actually mechanistic fix everything, that we can manipulate nature, so we have a mechanistic view and not an emergent view. We think that competition is the way to move forward. Nature is showing us that collaboration is actually the way to move forward. We think that monoculture is the greatest invention. Monocultures are actually going down under all over the world. I can give you tons of examples where monoculture is telling us it doesn't work anymore. And finally, we have a linear value chain. Yes, we're talking about circular, but let's face it, in the OECD countries, 70% is still going into waste, and only 30% is recycled, and of the 30%, most of it is downcycled and not upcycled, or at least kept at the same level of the quality of the material. So we are living in total separation to these principles, and we are basically depending on Mother Nature. 60 to 70%, according to the World Economic Forum, is of the GDP worldwide is actually depending on the natural system. And
Which we're destroying.
Yeah, and we're just crazy. We are extracting this system, and we continue to extract it. And I'm basically saying there's a great solution. Let's align with the natural system. Let's do what Benedikt is doing. Benedikt has a business model which is based on being aligned with Mother Nature. And he is producing much better food. He is regenerating our soils. He's regenerating life. And there is an enormous growth potential. Doris will say a few words about that later. By simply regenerating the life that we have destroyed on this planet. And we have significantly destroyed life on this planet.
Wow, thanks, Jan. You don't sound like a typical business guy. That's not your usual VC speaking there. I have to just, no shock there. So Doris, you also kind of have had an epiphany and recognized the importance of this. You're a long-time celebrated film director, fictional and documentary films, and you teach film here in Munich. So why are you on the stage?
Well, I'm here, like most of us probably, because of Steffi Czani. And she sat me right next to Jan at a dinner 4 years ago, I believe. And I had an epiphany that a capitalist, to his very core, can also be a good person. That was my
That's the first
epiphany.
time you ever thought that, right? Yes.
And Jan told me about regenerative agriculture, and I thought, well, this sounds like a really boring subject. But it got me interested because I have a very Buddhist background, and since I'm an artist, I work from a very personal perspective. And there were two things. That summer, I drove down from Hanover, where I'm from originally, down to the south, and it was the first time ever in my life that I saw cows on brown grass. It was not the green pastures of my childhood. It was brown, burnt grass. And it looked like out of another country. I knew this site from Spain, from African countries, from South America, but not from northern Germany. That was one thing. And the other one, just around the corner, is the film school where I teach. And I noticed that my students were getting more and more desperate about climate change and the fact that we're not doing anything. So this is, to me, the big conundrum, that we do know a lot of things. Everybody here, including myself, I know a lot of things theoretically about climate change. But what do I do with it? What do I do? How do I become active? So because of this connection, I thought, well, maybe we have to just get it across to a mass audience and make a documentary about exactly this, what Benedikt is doing, and make it not fun necessarily, but to make it hopeful. So I promise you, watch it, Farm Rebellion, Disney. You don't have to get another subscription. Just get on it, a free trial, get off it after 3 weeks. Watch it for free. That's the way to do it, right? And I promise you, you will feel better after watching it than you feel before watching it. Because what Benedikt and his entire wonderful crew show is that if we start to understand what it means to connect ourselves to the soil, and to connect ourselves to animals and to this whole cycle, the circular mode of looking at the world, it not only means better food and hopefully better climate at some point, it also means that we ourselves connect ourselves to our life force, which might sound a bit esoterical. It's not. I think it's really very, very, very important to all of us right now, because we are very disconnected from the soil. We are disconnected from agriculture. Just try to check in your own minds how you view farmers, how you view the farming here in Bavaria. What is your connection to it? What is your true connection to it? And I think we have to change that fundamentally, and we have to find that connection with farming, and we have to educate ourselves and understand how our only way out, and I truly think this now after having learned so much from you and from Jan and from all the experts who are also in our documentary, we have to, now I lost my train of thought, we have to educate ourselves about these things in order to be able to understand how we ourselves can become active. That was my train of thought.
One quick question before you finish, because Martin from Circle Economy, when he was up here, a couple times said, it sounds spiritual, but then he kind of changed the topic. But I have a feeling you think it is spiritual.
Well, it's spiritual in the sense that all religions teach us about a circular way of living. They all do.
Right.
No matter which religion. I have a Buddhist background. I made a documentary a while back, was called How to Cook Your Life, about a Zen priest who talks about the same thing. And Zen is basically always about this. Connect yourselves, and especially understand that you are connected to the soil is connected to food, and you are, of course, connected to food, because we are what we eat. And the difficulty I see, though, is that we don't understand. Right now, and I woke up this morning quite sad, IATT is happening, the entire city is cut off because of what exactly? Because of cars, more cars. I read in the paper today statistics. Now, today, there are more cars being sold than ever before. Ever before. And every young German, apparently, wants a car. I thought it was different, but no. So there's this enormous dichotomy right now, and that's why this is so important, to not cut ourselves off more and more and more from the source of everything, which is the soil, but to try to reconnect ourselves, and by means, and this is my means, of education, of learning, how can we become part of the big circle?
Really good. Thank you. So we have a farmer, we have an investor who's had an epiphany, we have a media person who's had an epiphany, and we also have a real full-time activist. So Fabio is with Climate Farmers. Tell us what that is and what you do and your perspective.
Perfect. Thank you for being here and for inviting us. My name is Fabio. I'm representing Climate Farmers, and I'm here to share the story my story. And I came from a mechanical engineering background and studied renewable energies, and then also searched for, okay, how can I actually have a meaningful impact on climate change, and how can I mitigate climate change? And I think most of us, we can feel it this year, like the climate is playing crazy, like we have floods, temperatures are increasing, but also dropping immensely, and all of us are kind of asking ourselves, like, what can I actually do? And I think regenerative agriculture is opening a door for all of us, because it goes beyond agriculture and just working with the soil, but rather towards a mindset and a worldview and how we interact with the world around us. And I think this is something that we as climate farmers do, but also me personally. So asking ourselves and reflecting about what is actually the sense of life, and how, as Benedikt already said, for the soil, how do we have this multifunctionality and the interconnectedness, not only in the soil, but also between us humans, and how can we collaborate as humans. And this is what and my role within Climate Farmers is. I'm connecting farmers around Europe and embracing collaboration and not competition between humans, because I think this is something that we need for the future. And Climate Farmers is supporting that idea of not only community-based agriculture, but also business-based agriculture. So that not only the responsibility is on a single farmer, and we have only the private owner who's responsible for feeding the world and mitigating climate change, but also all of us supporting the need for food and climate change mitigation. So I'm here to share with you, go out there and share the idea of regenerative agriculture with your neighbor, with your business, and with the people around you, because I think it's transformative and has a big impact on the world that we live in.
That's beautiful. So I want maybe, Benedikt, quickly give us a snapshot of how is or regenerative agriculture doing? I mean, is it really growing, and how is it in Europe compared to the United States and other parts of the world?
You know, I think it depends on from which angle we look at it, right? I think starting from the farmers, you know, I think we've never had as dramatic situation as we are facing right now. The world is fundamentally changing. Life is getting so badly under pressure of farmers. They are incredibly caught up in the system. They're incredibly dependent. They are incredibly frustrated. The number of suicides is skyrocketing. And these are the people that we all on a global scale need 3 times a day just for food. Not even talking about all the other ecological and social benefits, right? And they are desperate, and they are looking for solutions. They're looking for new ways. They're looking how to adapt, right? So there is certainly this push from the ground up on a farmer's level, but at the same time we have those huge industrial structures, some of which are obviously commercially incentivized, that are quite all right with them being in that position. They put them there. We all put them there because what we wanted for years and years was the biggest amount of food for the cheapest possible price.
Yeah.
Well, that came at a cost, and the cost we are now all experiencing, right? So I think regenerative agriculture, with all the potential it comes with, and some of the things that we still have to solve, has the ability to bring us together, has the ability to give hope, has the ability to structure a new narrative about farming. And you know, as I described in the beginning, I was convinced from day one because I was looking for solutions and no one could give me any. This is why I started the research. This is why we had such a strong focus on the science, because I said I need to prove it myself, I need to do it myself, and I need to show through scientific monitoring and analysis that it actually works. And so I've been always focused on doing it and proving it. But the reason why I went into or decided to do this TV series, the reason why I wrote a book, the reason why I tried to engage also in a public debate, is because we need to change those big systems that surround agriculture. So education, science, the way we develop technology, access to land, how can the capital market be part of the transformation, the political agenda, of course. And we can only achieve that through society, through people understanding the importance of healthy soil, to fall back into love with farming, with nature, with agriculture, understanding what exactly you said, that reconnection. And it is spiritual, but the magic of life. Everyone who's gone through childbirth in some way or another knows it's magic, and that is what it's about. We are from the soil. So we are on a good way, but we could do better. That's the short answer.
It's just, I learned so much from this documentary that I was so involved in for such a long time. And there's this one line, for instance, in it. It says, and I think you say it, biodiversity below the ground creates diversity above the ground.
Yeah.
Again,
right.
Diversity below the ground creates diversity above the ground. Explain what that means.
Well,
because
wait.
it was
We've only got 1 minute and 36 seconds left, which is really frustrating. But I wanted to make one key point that needs to be said here, and it's another great fact in this Paul Hawken book, Regenerate, which I highly recommend. You know, regenerative farming, which is essentially, you didn't really answer my question, Benedikt, because the answer is almost no farmers are actually doing this at the scale of global agriculture today. That is a crisis. But if a third of all farming was actually regenerative, according to Hawken, who's one of the real experts, we could make a vast percentage of our required carbon sequestration requirements of the Paris Treaty goals. We could dramatically improve the world's climate, even if only a third of the world's farmers moved to regenerative, because the quantity of CO2 that would be sequestered by that form of farming would have that big of an effect. So farming could save the earth. But I also wanted to get one other point, and I want to turn to Fabio for this, because, and some of you others might have a point of view on it. There has been a lot of co-optation already of this idea, partly because in regenerative farming is money. there is carbon credits to be had by when farmers do it. So that's a good thing. I hope you're benefiting from it. But some of these giant agribusinesses are starting to talk about regenerative farming as if they're gung-ho for it. But how do you feel about that, Fabio?
Yeah, we focused on that within Climate Farmers and realized there's no social innovation and responsibility within food corporates and big organizations. And now regenerative agriculture or regeneration is a buzzword, and it goes towards greenwashing. But we try to change it fundamentally so that we strive not only for circulation, but for deep system transformation. And I think this is something where we can work together with corporates and big food corporates to have a business-supported agriculture, to make them responsible for the land and also for the risks that farmers have. Because in the end, they have the risk of working with the land. Climate change is getting more and more severe. So we are getting in touch with them, and there's regulations on the European policy level happening. And this is good, but they need to be navigated and directed in a good direction. We're supporting with that.
Great. Now, Jan, I want to give you the last word, because you really are the progenitor of this session. I know you agree that there's a real problem with corporate attitudes, but just talk about that or anything else that you feel we should know before we leave here, especially about what this group can do as they leave to push this idea forward.
Well, as an economist, I know one solution, and that sounds really strange probably in the first moment, but we have a wrong accounting system. Our problem is that we are not accounting for the externalities that are caused by the current extractive system.
Right.
And so imagine we have a GDP account, which is, imagine you have a jungle, and the jungle is cut, and that creates GDP. Next, we plant some oil palms on this land. Again, we create GDP. But nobody accounts for what has actually been caused by cutting down this rainforest, which actually is our life system. And so what gives me a little bit of hope is that this idea is slowly getting into politics. The White House has issued just last year a paper on how to create a natural capital account in the accounting system for a country. We have seen the Green New Deal in the EU, which, if you read it, is actually not bad policy. The problem is we are completely diluting the good intentions of this policy, and particularly we Germans are masters of doing this at the moment to actually foster those interests that are, for me, a little bit like the dark forces that still want to maintain the status quo and don't understand that we have to move to what I call a regenerative economy. So if I would be president, I would change Monday morning the accounting system, and I think that would solve a lot. It would create a lot of innovation because suddenly companies would be under pressure to rethink their business model. If all the people here in this room would support such a thing in terms of voting for something like this, they already would do a great support.
Watch Farm Rebellion.
The title of the session was Regenerative Agriculture, There is Hope. So thank you for ending on a mildly hopeful note. Thank you all. We ran out of time, but appreciate you all. Great conversation. Thank you.